You're dismissed, Candace chirped, tossing a Halvix Group mug across the table like it was a consolation prize on a rigged game show. It clattered against the conference room wall, sloshing lukewarm coffee down the side like the world's saddest waterfall. Enjoy unemployment, she added, flashing her Invisalign smile like she'd just delivered a TED talk on nepotism. I didn't say a word. Not when she called me dead weight. Not when she said the company only existed because of her last name, and not even when she fake apologized that these decisions are never personal. I just stood there while the team looked down at their keyboards like they were trying to tunnel out through Excel. She wanted a scene. I gave her silence. That was my power move. What I really wanted to do was laugh. Because if this company existed because of her last name, then someone should have told her daddy dearest it was my signature on the 2012 licensing carve-out that made the algorithm legal in the first place. But sure, Candace, tell the team again how your visionary leadership turned a strip mall call center with 2 working phone lines into a $300 million valuation. Oh, and while I've got your attention, let me sneak in something real quick before the story picks up steam. If you're enjoying this ride and you're not subscribed yet, go on and hit that button. It helps us out way more than you think. And throw a like if Candace already reminds you of someone in your office who thinks Slack emojis count as leadership. All right, back to our regularly scheduled humiliation. My palms were sweating, but my jaw stayed locked. 22 years. I joined Havix before it had a working coffee machine. Back when the company handbook was just a post-it note that said try not to get sued. I built the vendor chain. I wrote the compliance roadmap. I created the licensing structure. I was the first one in, last one out. And somehow I still ended up standing under fluorescent lights while a nepotism Barbie with a trust fund and a motivational quote tattoo fired me in front of my team like it was performance art. Mug rolled to a stop at my feet. I bent down, picked it up, and turned it in my hands. On one side, it said Havix, built to last. On the other side, in tiny print, was our legal tagline, licensing proprietary systems for adaptive integration. And I almost laughed, because I was the one who built the proprietary system, and I was the one who owned the adaptive integration license. I didn't need to argue. I didn't need to scream or throw it. All I needed to do was walk to my car, call one very specific person at Action Tech, our would-be acquirer, and quietly remind them that their $300 million purchase, yeah, that was a lease. A lease with a very narrow clause tied to my continued employment. Candace didn't know about the clause. No one did. Hell, I had forgotten about it until last night, and I was rage scrolling through old contract folders at 3:07 a.m. with a bottle of Pinot and a mouthful of sour gummy worms. Clause 14.3b, buried in a 2012 separation agreement. At the time, Havix had been splitting IP rights for tax purposes. We carved out the compliance algorithm, my algorithm, into a shell LLC in my name for liability insulation. It was supposed to revert to Havix fully in 2020, but the clause was never closed. The CTO forgot. Legal forgot, I forgot, until last night. Now it was my ace. I dropped the mug in the trash on the way out. The receptionist tried to make eye contact, bless her heart, but I didn't stop. I didn't say goodbye to the team. I didn't grab the folder of paperwork Candace had flung at me like she was on an episode of The Apprentice, Family Edition. I just walked out of Havix for what they thought was the last time. They didn't know the deal wasn't done. They didn't know the license wasn't theirs. They didn't know the woman who just managed spreadsheets was about to pull the pin on a legal grenade they'd been sitting on for over a decade. But they would. Very soon. The thing about rage is it makes you thorough. Not loud, not reckless. Thorough. And I was halfway through alphabetizing my archive drive by emotional trauma when I found it. Buried under a folder titled Tax Shield June 2012, in a subfolder called IP Agreements Do Not Edit, sat a 14-page PDF I hadn't opened in over a decade. Clause 14.3b. There it was, glowing like a flaming middle finger from the past. I scrolled past the boilerplate, past the indemnity clauses, past the obscure legalese no one ever reads. Page 9. In the event of unilateral termination of the undersigned without cause, IP rights for adaptive licensing module revert in full to the entity B. Harland Holdings, LLC. That entity, still active, still in good standing with the Secretary of State, and still 100% mine. I leaned back in my chair, wine glass in one hand, trackpad in the other, rereading the clause like it was a bedtime story for grown women who have had enough of corporate fairy tales. The same compliance algorithm Candace and her brother were shopping around for $300 million didn't even belong to Havix. It was leased to them, on a knife-edge clause tied to me. I swirled the wine, Chardonnay, a little warm, didn't matter. I opened my phone and scrolled to F. There he was, Franklin Ramirez, once a junior dev on my team, now VP of Integration Strategy at Action Tech, the very company sniffing around to acquire Havix. Last time we spoke, he was still trying to convince me that craft kombucha could totally replace coffee. I tapped the call button. Beth, his voice had the warm shock of someone hearing from a ghost they owed money. Hey Frank, long time, you disappeared. Everyone thought you retired to raise alpacas in Oregon or something. I laughed. Not quite. Listen, I need 5 minutes, something about the Halvix acquisition. Privately, silence, then go on. I wrote the adaptive licensing module. You're acquiring that tech, right? Yeah, it's the core asset. He paused. Wait, you wrote that. I also own it. Come again, clause 14.3b. From the 2012 IP carve-out, the licensing is tied to my LLC. It reverts to me if Halvix terminates me without cause. Frank cursed softly. They fired you, he asked. Like he couldn't quite believe the level of corporate incompetence he was hearing. 15 minutes ago, I said. Candace threw a mug at me, said the company exists because of her last name. He groaned. Jesus Christ, I'm sending you the clause. You'll want your legal to verify it, quietly. You want to kill the deal? I want it done right, and I want them to learn something about gratitude before they choke on it. More silence. Then send it. I'll get back to you tonight. I did, along with time-stamped confirmation that B. Harland Holdings, LLC was still the licensee of record. I also attached the original dev logs, just in case anyone wanted to pretend I hadn't built the damn thing line by line, while Candace was still studying abroad and Tyler was vomiting into a campus fountain. I didn't expect fireworks. Not yet. This was just the fuse. Later that night, as the house settled into that late evening quiet where you can hear your own thoughts sneaking around, my phone buzzed. Franklin had replied with a single sentence. Our counsel is very, very interested in speaking to you directly. I smiled, refilled my wine, and clicked open the clause again. It read sweeter than dessert. They thought I walked away humiliated. They thought I had no cards left, but I had the contract. I had the license. And now I had the buyer's attention. The board email hit my inbox like a spitball lobbed from across the cafeteria. Subject line, leadership transition and deal finalization update. I already knew what it said. Hell, I could have written it for them in my sleep, complete with the empty HR-friendly jargon. But I opened it anyway, more out of morbid curiosity than masochism. It was worse than I expected. Candace was stepping into an elevated strategic leadership role, while Tyler would be spearheading final integration efforts with the acquiring team. That's corporate speak for Daddy gave us the keys to the $300M car. Hope we don't drive it into a lake. No mention of me. No acknowledgement that the very system they were selling came out of my garage/basement/backbreaking weekends. According to this glowing email, I had never existed. I was just a nameless former contributor whose value had conveniently expired right before the champagne popped. I'd built the skeleton, written the nervous system, architected every logical limb of that compliance algorithm. But now Tyler, who once thought API was a car insurance company, was listed as technical point of contact. I closed the email and stared out the kitchen window for a long time. Just me, a crusty coffee mug, and the cold rage of a woman erased. The first crack came 2 days later. Franklin pinged me. You should hear what just happened on the legal sync call. Apparently, Tyler had joined the call 15 minutes late, shirt untucked, holding what appeared to be a Red Bull and a stress ball shaped like a butt. He proceeded to fumble through a document review where he referred to indemnification as that clause that keeps us from getting sued or whatever, and called an NDA a vibe blocker. At one point, he claimed he had personally overseen the encryption layer that safeguarded client-side data. I nearly choked on my microwave popcorn. Tyler once asked if encryption meant putting a password on an Excel file. By the time the buyer's legal team wrapped, Franklin messaged me again. Their lead counsel mouthed what the F to me on camera. Not kidding. I wanted to feel vindicated. Instead, I felt the slow, bitter ache of watching something you love be manhandled by morons in designer loafers. But it was the email I got later that night that really twisted the knife. No subject line, no signature, just 5 words, we thought you'd be there. It was sent from a burner account, probably a junior buyer who couldn't risk being seen contacting me, but it landed like a punch. I sat there staring at the screen, rereading it over and over, like if I blinked the meaning would soften. Didn't they expected me to be in that room? They thought someone competent would be there to steer the ship. Someone who knew which clauses mattered, which technical diagrams were outdated, which promises were safe to make, and which would send compliance into a tailspin. They were expecting me. And now they were getting frat boy Tyler and Queen Bee Candace high on their own delusions. That night, I poured a second glass of wine and opened a folder I hadn't touched in years. License control materials. Inside, flowcharts, change logs, early memos, invoice trails, and a treasure trove of receipts they'd prayed I didn't keep. I started forwarding select files to my attorney. Original architecture sketch signed by me and initialed by then CTO, email chain confirming my LLC was set up for IP protection. Invoice showing Halvix paid my LLC quarterly licensing fees until 2020. An internal Slack export where Candace once typed, LOL, what does Beth even do anymore? That one wasn't necessary, but it was fun. My attorney replied within the hour, these are excellent, keep going. We may not need to use them, but if we do, these are bullets in the chamber. I wasn't interested in revenge for revenge's sake. This wasn't about payback. This was about facts, ownership, truth, I didn't need to ruin their careers, just needed to let gravity do its job when the floor gave out. And believe me, after the nonsense Tyler just spewed to Action Tech's lawyers, that floor was starting to crack. The reversion notice went out at 9:06 a.m. sharp. One clean, unassuming email from my attorney to Halvix's legal inbox and a CC to Action Tech's counsel. Subject line, Notice of License Reversion Adaptive Licensing Module. 6 sentences, zero drama, but the impact. Oh, sweetheart, that email had the potential to rip a $300 million rug out from under every smug loafer in that glass office tower. My hands were steady. No shaking, no hesitation. I even brewed myself a cup of coffee while it sent, because I'm a firm believer in proper rituals when you're about to drop a quiet bomb on people who called you obsolete. The license, per clause 14.3b, was now formally revoked from Halvix, effective immediately. The moment they terminated me without cause, and oh, did we have plenty of documentation proving it wasn't for performance, the rights reverted to be Harland Holdings, LLC, which was, in every legal and financial sense, me. They could keep the branding, keep the dumb mugs, but the brains behind the product, that walked out the door with my tote bag and parking pass. I didn't call Candace, didn't text anyone on the team, didn't go nuclear on Slack or post a passive-aggressive farewell on LinkedIn. No grandstanding, no speech. Just a simple back-end update on the licensing server that I still had admin access to because someone forgot to revoke my credentials. Idiots. I logged into the Halvix compliance dashboard, clicked into the licensing system, and adjusted one field, vendor, Halvix Group Inc., right arrow pending third-party authorization underneath in gray text. I added status, awaiting signature, be Harland Holdings, LLC, and then I activated the watermark. Every document related to the adaptive licensing module now bore a faint overlay in the lower right corner. Provisional license, be Harland Holdings, LLC, all rights reserved. It wasn't loud. It wasn't threatening. It was just there. A soft, legal whisper across every spec sheet, flow diagram, and user interface blueprint. By noon, the buyer's tech team had noticed. Franklin texted, "Hey, did you update the license metadata? The docs are flagged awaiting signature." I replied with a single emoji. Shushing face an hour later, Action Tech's legal team pinged Halvix with a request for clarification. One of their junior counsels sent a polite, low-pressure note asking why the system files were watermarked by a third-party vendor not listed in the original deal doc. Candace, of course, assumed it was a glitch. I know this because Franklin, God bless him, forwarded me her internal reply from the shared Slack channel, just a formatting error or dev hiccup. Tyler said the sandbox isn't syncing properly. We'll fix it. Sure you will, sweetie. Meanwhile, Tyler had no idea how to even access the sandbox environment. The last time I checked, he still thought Git was a type of malware. He'd probably just opened a blank Excel sheet and typed encryption true in the top left cell. But no one panicked. Not yet. This wasn't a nuclear strike, it was a slow leak in the oxygen tank. Power was shifting and I could feel it, like pressure building in a sealed room. Only I had the key to the airlock. The buyer didn't pull the plug, not yet. They were too close, too committed, and too confused. But now, they were alert, they were watching, and they were questioning. And that was all I needed for now. The real storm was still ahead. But today I pressed exactly one button, and the whole damn machine hiccuped. It started with a harmless question. One of those seemingly polite, almost too casual inquiries that lawyers ask when they already know something's wrong but want to watch you lie about it in real time. "We noticed Bethany Harland isn't on your organizational chart," said the lead buyer from Action Tech, flipping through the slide deck like he was sorting junk mail. "Is she no longer with the company?" Candace smiled. That glossy, over-rehearsed kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes and usually precedes a text talk about embracing disruption. Her voice dripped fake warmth. Bethany was part of an earlier phase of the project. We've since streamlined operations. My brother Tyler has taken over that vertical. Streamlined operations. That's what they're calling it now. Tyler, sitting to her left in a too-tight blazer and what I swear was a Supreme-branded tie clip, cleared his throat. "Yeah, we've modernized the stack. The old compliance code was legacy stuff. I built the current framework myself." Franklin, seated across the table, didn't even blink. He just scribbled something into his legal pad and nodded. "Interesting. Interesting is corporate dialect for you just stepped in something, and I'm letting you track it around the room." Action Tech's lead counsel, a woman named Denise with the kind of perfectly ironed expression that only 30 years of mergers can create, looked up and asked, "Can we get documentation of Tyler's involvement in the technical design of the adaptive licensing module?" Silence. Tyler looked to Candace. Candace looked to the Halvix CFO, a man whose soul was visibly trying to exit through the pores on his forehead. "Of course," Candace said, too fast. "We'll have our legal and dev teams assemble something before close of business today." "Perfect," Denise said, sliding her folder shut with a polite smile. "Let's hold final signatures until then. Just standard clarification protocol." It wasn't, and everyone in that room knew it. Because when Denise said standard, what she meant was suspicious. And when a buyer delays final signature on a $300 million deal, because they don't know who built the product they're buying. It's not a protocol delay. It's a yellow flag flapping so hard it might snap off the pole. Back at Halvix HQ, the tension spread like a rash. The CFO canceled his golf trip. Two board members held an impromptu alignment call that devolved into a full-blown blame ping-pong match by the 10-minute mark. Someone from PR was seen wandering the hallway with a stapler in one hand and a bottle of Tums in the other. The receptionist said she hadn't seen Candace's assistant cry that hard since HR forgot her birthday. Meanwhile, I stayed quiet, still invisible, still legacy. No gloating, no email bombs, no anonymous tips to the press. Just me and my laptop in a cozy coffee shop 3 blocks from Halvix, sipping black coffee and watching the system I built slowly glitch under the weight of their arrogance. They thought I was gone. They thought I'd packed up my pride and left it on the conference table next to the HR folder and the branded mug. But in their rush to erase me, they'd forgotten one thing. You can't delete the architect and expect the building to hold. They wanted my name off the charts, off the emails, off the documents. Fine, because now it was showing up somewhere else. Right where they couldn't ignore it, stamped across every page of the compliance module as B. Harland Holdings, LLC, third-party licensee. And thanks to a line in an old agreement they never read, they needed my signature to close the deal. Candace was still smiling, still smug, still spinning half-truths like she was auditioning for a reality show called Boardroom Barbie. But the buyer was watching. The CFO was sweating, and I was right where I needed to be, just outside the room, waiting. Candace called it a moment of alignment, but the rest of us would have called it what it was: damage control wrapped in motivational fluff. She gathered the board and senior staff into conference room A, the fancy one with the fake cherrywood table and the smart glass windows that never worked right, and launched into what she must have thought was a rallying speech. This company is on the brink of something historic, she beamed, pacing like a cruise ship magician. Yes, the buyers had questions. That's normal. But let's stay focused. This is about legacy, about family, about resilience. Translation: ignore the legal landmine we stepped on and keep smiling for the cameras. Then she pivoted. As for Bethany, she paused, eyes scanning the room with a carefully calculated amount of disdain. Look, she was good at what she did. She was reliable. But let's be honest, she was the help. She managed data. She documented things. She wasn't a strategist. Not like us. Not like us. There it was. The royal we of entitlement. The CFO's mouth tightened. One of the board members, a wiry man named Alan who remembered me from the company's broken-busted strip mall days, shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Candace wrapped up with a flurry of buzzwords and a promise. Let's get through this minor hiccup and celebrate properly tomorrow. We'll finalize the signature, toast to our future, and then it's smooth sailing. And by God, she meant it. That night, she threw a rooftop party at a hotel downtown. A candlelit affair with signature cocktails named The Closeout and a banner that read, $300M and climbing. Everyone showed up. Tyler rolled in 20 minutes late with 2 girls from accounting, already buzzed and reeking of someone's perfume. By hour 2, he was slurring his words and waving around his phone to show off a meme he made. Dude, look, he barked to anyone who'd listen. I made this gif of Bethany's old spreadsheet blinking you've been replaced. Get it? Because the chick who made the spreadsheet got canned? They laughed. Not because it was funny, but because they had to. That's how the Candace kingdom worked. What Tyler didn't know, what none of them knew, was that while he was spilling vodka cranberry on his loafers and Candace was blowing air kisses at the investors, I was 30,000 feet above ground, somewhere over Missouri, in seat 11A of a red-eye flight chartered by Action Tech. No press release, no fanfare, just a quiet ticket, booked under consultant IP compliance oversight with a private car waiting on the tarmac. Action Tech wasn't buying smoke and mirrors. They weren't buying Vibe decks and rebranded verticals. They were buying compliance. And now that they'd seen the watermark, traced the license trail, and reviewed the clause, there was only one person they wanted walking them through the final verification. Me. The buyer's lead counsel called it an essential integrity check. I called it poetic as hell. At the airport, a man in a navy suit met me at the gate. No introductions. Just a nod and a folder marked final phase, signature prep. Inside, every document Candace had claimed to finalize, and across the bottom of each page, in highlighter yellow, were the same 4 words, signature required B. Harland, I didn't smile, not yet. That would come later in the boardroom, when I slid my card across the table and watched Tyler's mouth forget how to form words. But in that moment, with the city lights blinking beneath the plane window and their champagne party just hitting full swing, I leaned back in my seat, adjusted my blazer, and reread the clause I knew by heart. In the event of unilateral termination, license shall revert in full. I wasn't just back. I was the signature, and they were about to learn what happens when you try to sell the house without the deed. The boardroom looked like a crime scene waiting for a confession. Polished chrome, stacked legal binders, bottled water labels perfectly aligned like military recruits. At the head of the table sat Denise, Action Tech's lead counsel, cool as dry ice in a hurricane. Around her, 2 corporate attorneys, the head of M&A and Franklin, who who refused to make eye contact with Candace from the moment she strutted in. And Candace did strut. She entered first in a white blazer that probably cost more than the entire Halvix server room. Behind her was Tyler, cheeks flushed with either confidence or hangover, wearing sunglasses indoors like a failed TikTok coach for startup bros. "Let's close this deal," she chirped like she was announcing a wedding toast instead of trying to finalize a $300 million acquisition built on a paper-thin lie. "Glad to hear it," Denise replied flatly, sliding a document packet toward them. "We'll just be confirming a few final elements before signature." "No problem," Tyler said, flashing a thumbs up. "We've got all the ducks in the row. Legal vetted it, tech's clean, and the IP's fully in-house now." "Fully in-house." Niece's pen paused mid-signature. "Yeah, I mean, I built most of it," Tyler said, flipping his laptop open like it might provide supporting evidence. "It's proprietary, all Halvix, nothing external, 100% ours." He nodded like a bobblehead made of hubris. Denise didn't respond right away. She turned instead to her associate and whispered something. He tapped something into his tablet and slid it back to her. She read the screen for 2 seconds and calmly asked, "Then why does every file in the adaptive licensing module repository list a third-party watermark?" Candace blinked. "What?" Franklin cleared his throat loudly. Tyler tried to bluff. "Oh, that, yeah, I think that's like legacy metadata. From when Bethany ran some beta stuff years ago. It's been replaced, has it?" Denise asked, flipping open a folder. She pointed to the lower corner of a printed schematic, my schematic, because this was generated 2 weeks ago. Tyler looked to Candace. Candace looked like she'd just bitten into a lemon labeled consequences. That's when the door opened. No knock, no announcement, just me. I stepped inside like I'd never left. Clean gray suit, no makeup, hair pinned back, a plain leather folder in one hand and in the other my Halvix badge, already deactivated but still gleaming like a bullet casing. Candace flinched so hard her bracelet snapped against the table. "What the hell is she doing here?" she hissed, nearly knocking over her kombucha bottle. Denise didn't blink. "Bethany Harland has been asked to join the meeting by Action Tech. As the legal licensee of the core IP you're attempting to sell, she's essential to closing." Tyler actually laughed, a single snort that died in his throat when Franklin finally looked him square in the eye and said, "She's the only one who can sign the license transfer." I didn't sit at the head of the table. I walked to the far end, pulled out a chair, and sat without a word. Not out of weakness. Control. The quiet kind. The kind you earn through years of being dismissed, then proving why that was a mistake they'd never recover from. Candace tried to salvage it. "This is ridiculous. She doesn't even work here anymore." Denise flipped to another page, which is precisely why Section 14.3b triggered. IP ownership reverted to her LLC the moment you terminated her. It's enforceable, confirmed by 3 separate legal reviews and already entered into discovery. I didn't smile, not yet. But I did tilt my head just slightly, just enough to meet Candace's eyes across the table, and let her see what real leverage looks like. She opened her mouth to protest, then closed it. Once in her carefully curated life, Candace Hawthorne had nothing to say. And me? I hadn't said a damn thing since I walked in. Didn't have to. The knife was already in. I waited until the silence had ripened, until every eye in the room had ping-ponged between Denise, Tyler, and the suddenly radioactive folder of legal documents spread across the table like the aftermath of a failed cover-up. Then I reached into my leather folio, pulled out a single cream-colored business card, and slid it deliberately slowly across the glass table to the lead buyer. No dramatic flourish, no speech, just the sound of soft cardstock gliding across corporate ego. He picked it up, turned it over once. "Read it. B. Harland Holdings, LLC founder and principal licensee Adaptive Compliance Systems exclusive rights holder." He didn't raise an eyebrow, didn't look shocked. He just leaned back in his chair, tapped the card against his notepad twice, then turned his head toward Tyler, who was starting to sweat through his off-white collar. Then he asked it. The question that detonated the whole illusion: "So, is the $300 million deal off, or is he the one who's fired?" The oxygen got vacuumed out of the room. Tyler made a sound, somewhere between a laugh, a cough, and a whimper, and looked to Candace like she had the cheat codes. But her hands were already inside the folder, shuffling documents with the desperation of a magician, realizing the rabbit is missing. Wait, we had full internal clearance," she stammered. "Our legal said the IP was clean. It's our software." Denise's eyes didn't move from the card in her hand. The Halvix CFO leaned forward, pale as office drywall. "Candace, did you verify the license status post-termination?" "I didn't need to," she snapped. She was staff. "Owned it?" "I thought Tyler said it was," but Tyler was now trying to minimize his own involvement like a rat, realizing the ship has holes on all decks. "I mean, yeah, but like, I didn't say I built the whole thing," he sputtered. "I said I helped. It's like a team thing, a vibe." Franklin covered his mouth. I wasn't sure if it was to hide a smirk or to keep from laughing out loud. Candace rifled through the contract binder, fingers moving faster now, searching for a magic clause that didn't exist. "There has to be Section 9? No, 10, where's that IP summary appendix?" Denise didn't help her. She turned to her own counsel instead, who nodded and leaned in to say the final blow, calmly, clearly. Section 14.3b is enforceable. Confirmed. The moment Miss Harland was terminated without cause, all licensing rights to the adaptive licensing module reverted to B. Harland Holdings, LLC. Halvix no longer has the authority to sell it. Not without her consent. The room froze. The CFO's jaw clenched. One board member sat back, whispering something sharp to another. I saw the PR director slowly lower her pen and slide her notepad under her chair like she didn't want her name attached to any of this. Candace opened her mouth again, but this time nothing came out. Just a low inhale, like she'd finally realized the party was over. She wasn't the host. She was the mess. Tyler tapped aimlessly on his laptop, then closed it altogether when he realized no one was going to save him. I didn't move, didn't blink. Let them sit in it. Let them feel it. The culmination of 2 decades of being sidelined, overlooked, edited out of my own legacy, all funneled into this one perfect moment of silence that said everything I didn't have to. They tried to erase the wrong person. Now the ink was bleeding through the page. I reached for my water, took a sip. Then I leaned back, crossed one leg over the other, and let them come to grips with what they'd just lost, or rather, what they never really owned in the first place. They held the vote behind closed doors, but the glass walls didn't hide much. I sat just outside, sipping a bland office cappuccino from the machine that had replaced the one I installed back in 2011, the same machine Tyler once broke trying to make oat milk from scratch. Through the frosted panel, I saw the CFO stand, pacing in tight little circles. 2 board members gestured toward a printout, likely the clause. Franklin sat with his arms crossed, unmoving. Denise didn't bother looking at anyone. She already knew how this ended. 20 minutes later, the door opened. The CEO himself, Candace's father, Harold Hawthorne, stepped out with the kind of expression you only see in courtrooms and funerals. He avoided my eyes, but nodded once, sharp and shallow. Miss Harland, he said, voice flat. The board has voted unanimously to remove Tyler Hawthorne from the transaction, effective immediately. I raised an eyebrow, waiting, and Candace has been placed on administrative review pending a full internal audit. Ah, so she hadn't just lost the deal, she'd lost the room. Franklin walked up next. We've drafted amended terms, he said, holding out a new packet with a tab marked signature, consultant. We'd like you to sign under your own name and under your LLC, triple rate. Non-compete waived. You'll have autonomy to oversee all license transitions. I flipped to the last page. Read it once. Read it again. They were doing everything they could to make this right. Not out of morality, but out of necessity. And that I could live with, I signed. One clean stroke of ink across a line that had until now been reserved for men in suits who thought they invented everything they inherited. When I stood, I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just closed the folder, slid it back to Franklin, and walked out. In the hallway just past the frosted glass and the stunned silence, Candace stood by the copier, arms crossed, face frozen. Her heels were off. Her bun had collapsed. Her phone was in her hand. Whatever lifeline she was searching for clearly wasn't picking up. She saw me. I slowed. She opened her mouth, maybe to protest, maybe to beg, maybe just to breathe, but I said nothing. Nothing was the only answer that mattered. I walked past her like she was a locked door in a building I no longer needed keys for, because now I was the building. 1 week later, the company website updated their vendor page. Exclusive compliance systems partner B. Harland Holdings, LLC. Every new product, every client license, every audit trail and signature funnel all went through me. Tyler's LinkedIn went quiet. His co-founder title mysteriously vanished. Candace's PR assistant issued a vague press release about wellness leave and family recalibration. And me, I went home, fed my plants, slept a full night for the first time in months, started drafting a white paper for the next phase of compliance tools. I didn't dance on their graves. I didn't need to. They handed me the deed, and I walked away without a match in sight. Sometimes revenge doesn't look like fire. Sometimes it's just ownership. Thanks for watching, you cubicle warriors. Hit that subscribe button. Unless you're my old boss, then you're on your own. Revenge of the Coffee Pot strikes again.